A crisp white suit, an elegant hijab, two worlds colliding in a London university. When billionaire heir Obina and senator's daughter Zainab fell in love, their families called it a betrayal of tradition and faith. Threatened with disinheritance, they built their own empire from the ground up, proving that the strongest foundations aren't made of old money, but new love. Their journey would redefine legacy for a modern Nigeria. The library at the London School of Economics was a temple of ambition, a cavernous space where silence was punctuated only by the hum of focused energy and the soft rustle of turning pages. For Obina Izudo, it was a second home, a sanctuary of order and logic. At 30, he was the picture of metropolitan precision, a man whose very presence seemed to lower the temperature in a room. His crisp white shirt, always white, always crisp, was a stark, clean canvas against the rich, dark mahogany of the study Corel. A tailored navy blue suit jacket was draped perfectly over the back of his chair. He was dissecting a complex merger proposal, his Montblanc pen gliding across a legal pad, his brow furrowed in a concentration so absolute he barely noticed the world around him. Across the room, Zainab Yahaya moved with a quiet grace that belied a formidable intellect. At 23, she carried the poise of someone who knew her own mind and her own worth. She was a vision of elegant modesty, her frame draped in a flowing dress of deep indigo, its fabric whispering against the polished floor. Her hijab, a masterpiece of deep navy chiffon, was pinned immaculately, framing a face of thoughtful, intelligent beauty. She was searching for a specific, obscure text on the intersections of Sharia law and modern international finance, her fingers, adorned with a single, delicate silver ring, trailing along the spines of heavy leather-bound books. Fate, it seemed, had placed the same text, jurisprudential bridges, Islamic finance in a globalized economy, on both their lists. It was the last copy. They reached for it simultaneously, their hands brushing in the dim, scholarly light. Obina looked up, a polite, automatic apology on his lips, but it died unspoken. Her eyes were not just brown, they were pools of warm, liquid amber, intelligent and deep, holding a universe of calm certainty that stopped him cold. For a moment, the meticulously calculated spreadsheet of his future seemed to flicker and glitch. "My apologies," he managed, his voice softer, more intrigued than he had intended. "It's quite all right," she replied, her voice a low, melodic counterpoint to the library's hush. A small, polite smile graced her lips. "It seems we have similar taste in exceptionally dense reading material." A spark, tiny but undeniable, passed between them. "I'm Obina," he said, surprising himself by extending a hand. "Zainab," she responded, taking it. Her handshake was firm, confident. "The chapter on hybrid sukuk structures is particularly impenetrable," he ventured, a rare, almost shy smile touching his own lips. "Perhaps it requires a joint task force to decipher." Her smile widened, lighting up her face. A collaborative effort? In this temple of individual achievement? How revolutionary! That first coffee, meant to be a 15-minute discussion on the book, stretched into 3 hours. They commandeered a small table in a corner cafe, the steam from their cappuccinos rising between them as they traversed effortlessly from economic theory and post-colonial trade structures to their personal dreams for Nigeria. He spoke of his father's conglomerate, the Izudo Empire, with a sense of duty laced with a quiet desire to build something that was truly his own, not just an inheritance. "I don't just want to manage wealth," he confessed, staring into his cup. "I want to create it. Ethical wealth. The kind that builds schools, not just skyscrapers." She listened, utterly captivated by the man behind the billionaire heir facade. She, in turn, spoke of her father, the powerful senator from Kano, and the weight of expectation that came with that name. She spoke of her faith not as a limitation, but as the framework that gave her strength and purpose. "I'm studying law not to argue in courtrooms, but to build bridges," she explained, her eyes alight with passion. "To find where our traditional values and the modern world can meet, not clash." He was captivated. He had met countless women in London and Lagos, but none who possessed this potent combination of sharp intellect, unwavering faith, and gentle strength. She was utterly, fascinatingly unique. Their love story began to unfold against the backdrop of London's grey skies and vibrant, multicultural heart. He introduced her to the hidden gems of the city's art scene, private viewings in Mayfair galleries where they would debate the meaning behind a particular brushstroke. She introduced him to the profound, silent peace of a Friday afternoon at the East London Mosque and the vibrant energy of the Brick Lane market afterwards. He was always in his uniform of white shirts and impeccably tailored suits. She was a rotating vision of color and elegance, her hijabs and dresses a beautiful expression of her identity. They were two different constellations, each following a predetermined celestial path. He was the Southern Cross, mapped and predictable. She was the North Star, constant and guiding. But in the vast, anonymous sky of London, they found a new, shared orbit, a gravity that pulled them irresistibly together. The proposal came 6 months later, not in a grand, public gesture, but in a private, moonlit corner of Kew Gardens. The air was cool, and the only sounds were the distant hum of the city and the rustle of leaves. He wasn't on one knee, he was standing before her, holding both her hands, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Zainab," he began, his voice steady with a certainty that had grown between them. "My father's legacy is a building. My mother's is a name. But with you, I want to build a world. A world that is entirely ours. Marry me." It wasn't a question. It was a declaration, a foundation stone laid for their future. Her yes was not a whisper, but a firm, joyful affirmation that echoed in the quiet night, the first official brick in the edifice of their shared life. They had no idea that the first storm to test their foundation was waiting for them back home. The 747 began its descent into Murtala Muhammad International Airport, and Obina reached for Zainab's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Her palm was cool and steady, but he could feel the faint, rapid pulse at her wrist. The sprawling, vibrant chaos of Lagos emerged from the haze, a tapestry of rusted corrugated roofs, gleaming glass towers, and the relentless, pulsing energy that was uniquely Nigerian. It was a world away from the orderly, muted tones of London. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low. She turned to him, her amber eyes filled with a resolve that bolstered his own. "We're just telling our parents a beautiful truth, Obina. How could anything be wrong with that?" He smiled, squeezing her hand. He wished he could borrow her certainty. He knew the world they were entering. A world where legacy was a fortress and name was a weapon. Their first stop was the Azudo mansion in Ikoyi. The high, white walls and imposing black gates felt more like a border crossing than a homecoming. As the gates swung open, the manicured perfection of the grounds unfolded, immaculate lawns, sculpted hibiscus bushes, and a fountain that sparkled under the brutal Lagos sun. The house itself was a masterpiece of modern Afro-minimalism, all clean lines and stark, powerful geometry. Uche, the long-serving steward, greeted them with a formal bow. "Welcome home, Master Obina. Your father is waiting in the main lounge." The main lounge was a vast, cool expanse of polished concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking, almost proprietary view of the Lagos Lagoon. The air was chilled and scentless. A sprawling, low-slung sofa in creamy white leather faced a wall that was, in fact, a massive, silent aquarium, its exotic fish drifting like living jewels. The room was illuminated by hidden recessed lighting, casting a bright, clinical glow that left no shadow untouched. It was stunning, powerful, and utterly devoid of warmth. Obina's father, Chief Emeka Izudo, stood with his back to them, watching the boats on the water. He was a man carved from the same granite as his house, his broad shoulders tense beneath a custom-made agbada of simple, expensive linen. He did not turn as they entered. "Father," Obina began, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "This is Zainab Yahaya." Chief Izudo turned slowly. His eyes, the same sharp, intelligent ones as his son's, swept over Zainab, taking in her elegant dress, her hijab, her composed posture. He did not smile. "Yahaya," he finally said, the name a statement, not a greeting. His voice was low and cold, devoid of the booming warmth he used with business associates. The northern politician. From Kano. It wasn't a question. He knew exactly who she was. "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir," Zainab said, her voice clear and respectful, betraying none of the tension that was coiling in the room. The chief ignored her, his gaze fixed on his son. "Obinna, we build bridges with these people. We sit on councils with them. We negotiate contracts and navigate their political terrain. We do not marry into them." He took a step forward, his presence filling the room. "Their world is one of fleeting power and ancient squabbles. Ours is concrete. It is industry. It is legacy. A legacy I have spent my life building for you. Our relationship doesn't threaten your legacy, father." "It has nothing to do with it," Obinna countered, his grip on Zainab's hand tightening. "Everything you do is my legacy." The chief snapped, his composure cracking for a split second. "Do you think this is just about love? This is a political marriage. A complication we do not need. She will be a distraction. A liability. You will end this." The finality in his voice was as solid and unyielding as the concrete beneath their feet. The flight to Kano the next day felt like traveling to another country. The dry, dusty air, the more conservative architecture, the different cadence of life. It was a world away from the coastal bustle of Lagos. The Yahaya compound was a testament to dignified, old-world wealth and modern influence. The high walls here were for privacy, not just security. They were received in the grand reception room. Unlike the cold minimalism of the Izudo home, this room was a beautiful fusion of tradition and contemporary comfort. Intricately carved mahogany panels adorned the walls, telling silent stories of heritage. They were contrasted with sleek, modern leather poufs and deep, plush sofas in shades of emerald and sapphire, arranged around a magnificent, room-sized Persian rug. A large, abstract metal art piece, its swirling forms inspired by Islamic calligraphy, hung majestically on the main wall, illuminated by discreet, elegant spotlights. Senator Ibrahim Yahaya sat in a high-backed chair, a picture of patriarchal authority. His wife, Halima, sat beside him, her eyes, so like Zainab's, filled with a nervous warmth. The senator listened as Zainab spoke, her voice filled with love as she introduced Obinna. He listened patiently, his expression growing stonier with each word. When she finished, a heavy silence descended. The senator steepled his fingers, his gaze resting not on Obinna, but on his daughter. "Zainab, Turuwa Tagida," he began, his voice deceptively calm, using the Hausa term of endearment, "star of the house. You have been led astray by these foreign ideas. You went to London to study law, not to lose your way." He finally turned his sharp, discerning eyes to Obinna. "A man from the south. A Christian. What life can he give you that a good, faithful man from here cannot? Will he wake with you for Fajr? Will he understand the sanctity of your space, the obligations of your family? My faith is strong enough for both of us, Baba," Zainab said, her voice trembling slightly but her chin held high. "And Obinna respects it completely. Respect is not enough," the senator said, his voice rising for the first time, cutting through the opulent room. "It is not the foundation of a life. You are choosing a path of isolation. You are choosing him over your family, over your faith, over everything you are." He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "If you do this, you walk this path alone. You will be on your own." The words landed not as a shout, but as a verdict. In the plush, beautiful room, surrounded by the artifacts of her family's love and history, Zainab felt the gilded bars of her cage snap firmly into place. She looked from her father's unyielding face to her mother's tear-filled one, and then to Obinna. In his eyes, she saw the same devastation, the same shock. The two fortresses of their lives had spoken. The drawbridges were being pulled up, and they were left standing together in the no-man's land between them. The silence in the Abuja hotel suite was a physical presence, thick and heavy, broken only by the distant, muted hum of the city's traffic. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant sounds of Lagos and Kano they had just left behind, the sounds of homes that were no longer theirs. Zainab stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her back to Obinna, watching the lights of the city twinkle like a field of fallen stars. The elegant chiffon of her hijab was damp with tears she refused to let him see. The echo of her father's words, "You will be on your own," replayed in her mind, each time a fresh wound. Obinna sat on the edge of the plush king-sized bed, his head in his hands. The crisp white shirt he had worn like a suit of armor now felt like a shroud. His father's dismissal, "You will end this," had been delivered with the cold finality of a judge passing a life sentence. The weight of his family's legacy, which he had always carried with a sense of duty, had now become a weapon used against him. He looked up, his gaze finding Zainab's solitary figure framed by the window. In her stillness, he saw not fragility, but a formidable strength. He rose and crossed the room, his footsteps silent on the expensive rug. He didn't speak. He simply wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder, his chest against her back. He felt her draw a shaky breath, then her hands came up to cover his, her grip tightening like a vice. "We have each other," he whispered into the fabric of her hijab, his voice raw. "My father. He thinks legacy is a balance sheet, a portfolio. We will show him. We will build our own. Brick by brick." Zainab turned in his embrace, her amber eyes glistening but dry, burning with a new, fierce light. "And my father thinks my faith is a delicate thing that will shatter outside its glass case," she said, her voice low and steady. "We will show him it is my spine. It can be my strength anywhere. We will be our strength." In that moment, the grief began to transmute into resolve. The inheritance they were being denied was not financial, it was emotional, a birthright of belonging. And so, they decided they would create a new one. Lekki Phase 1, Lagos, became their promised land. The two-bedroom apartment they rented was a world away from the sprawling mansions of their upbringings. It was modest, with plain white walls and tiled floors that echoed with a hollow emptiness when they first moved in. But to them, it was a blank canvas, filled with the most potent ingredient, possibility. With a budget that was a fraction of what they were used to, they became creators. They spent a weekend painting the walls a warm, welcoming white. They scoured markets in Ikja for furniture, finding a sturdy, dark wood dining table and 4 mismatched chairs that Obinna sanded and varnished himself. Zainab, with her impeccable eye, found bolts of vibrant Adair fabric at a stall in Balagan Market and had them fashioned into stunning floor-to-ceiling curtains and a large wall hanging that served as their statement piece, a bold, blue and white geometric pattern that screamed of Nigerian heritage, self-defined. The large windows became their greatest asset, allowing the brilliant Lagos sun to flood the space each morning, baking the rooms in a light that felt like hope. This was their sanctuary, their command center. Their war chest was their combined, personal savings. Obinna had a modest trust fund from his maternal grandfather, untouched and separate from his father's empire. Zainab had savings from her design projects and a small stipend from an aunt. It was enough for a seed. The venture was born at that same darkwood dining table, now littered with sketches, fabric swatches, and Obinna's laptop. The name came to them in a moment of synergy, Zobachi. A fusion of Zainab and Obinna, strong, modern, and uniquely theirs. The concept was Zainab's vision entirely. The modern Nigerian Muslim woman, she explained, her eyes alight with passion. She is a CEO, a student, a mother, a force. Her wardrobe should reflect that. It should be modest without being muted, elegant, powerful, and culturally grounded. She began designing. She sketched abayas with clean, architectural lines, using luxurious linens and silks instead of traditional, heavy fabrics. She designed corporate hijabs from breathable, gorgeous chiffons in jewel tones and neutrals. She created modest evening gowns that were a symphony of color and texture, incorporating subtle Nigerian motifs. Obinna was the architect of their business reality. He built the financial models, sourced ethical manufacturers after weeks of painstaking research and rejected proposals, and devised a digital-first strategy. Their first office was their sun-drenched living room, their boardroom the dining table often cluttered with fabric samples and takeout containers. There were nights of sheer exhaustion, of frustrated tears when a supplier delivered the wrong color, of anxious silence when their bank balance dipped alarmingly low. They would often just sit together on their small balcony, watching the Lagos skyline, their hands clasped, saying nothing, drawing strength from the simple fact that they were together. They were building something real. It was messy and terrifying and utterly theirs. The first order, a small batch of 10 abayas for a friend of a friend, felt like winning $1 million contract. When the payment notification popped up on Obina's phone, they had stared at it, then at each other, and burst into simultaneous, joyous laughter. It was the first fruit from the seeds they had planted in the barren soil of their family's rejection. It was small, but it was alive. And it was enough to keep them going. The first 2 years in the Lekki apartment were a relentless baptism by fire. The initial thrill of their first orders quickly gave way to the grueling reality of entrepreneurship. Their savings, which had seemed substantial, bled away on fabric imports, manufacturer deposits, and website development. The airy, sun-drenched apartment often felt like a pressure cooker, the Lagos heat a palpable representation of their stress. There was the night the power was cut off after a missed bill payment. They sat in the flickering light of a single candle, the silence between them heavy with a fear they were too proud to voice. Obina's phone, his last link to the world of corporate deals and private jets, sat dark on the table. "We could," Zainab began, her voice small in the darkness. "No," Obina cut in, his voice firm, final. He reached for her hand across the table. "We don't go back. We don't ask. We find a way." He spent the next day renegotiating every contract, while Zainab took a train to Abeokuta, bypassing expensive importers to source cheaper, high-quality attire directly from the local dyers. They learned to be scrappy, a skill never taught in their elite educations. Then a pivot. A popular lifestyle influencer, Amara, known for her sophisticated fusion of traditional and modern style, chanced upon Zainab's display at a small, curated pop-up market in Victoria Island. Amara was captivated by a particular abaya, a stunning piece in deep emerald green, with clean, minimalist lines and subtle gold thread embroidery at the cuffs that echoed traditional Hausa motifs. She bought it on the spot. The next day, she posted a series of photos wearing the Zobachi abaya, paired with contemporary statement jewelry and heels, against the backdrop of a modern Lagos gallery. The caption was simple: "Found a gem. #Zobachi is redefining elegance. Who runs the world?" The post went viral. Obina's phone, once a symbol of their isolation, began to buzz incessantly. First it was a trickle of DMs, then a flood. Bloggers, celebrities, and everyday women clamored for the Zobachi look. The story of the designers, the disowned billionaire heir and the senator's daughter building a life and a brand from scratch, leaked out, adding a powerful, human dimension to the clothes. Zobachi wasn't just selling fabric and thread, it was selling a narrative of resilience, modern love, and a new, self-made Nigerian dream. The explosion was seismic. Their small apartment, once their sanctuary, was now buried under rolls of fabric, packaging, and unfulfilled orders. It was no longer tenable. They moved 6 months later to a sleek, 2-story live-work studio in the heart of Victoria Island. The space was a testament to their arrival. The ground floor was a bright, open-plan showroom and atelier, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased their creations to the world. The walls were a gallery of their journey, mood boards, architectural sketches of future designs, and vibrant art from a new generation of Nigerian artists like Ndidi Emefiele and P.Ju Alatais. Upstairs, their new home was a masterpiece of sophisticated, modern Nigerian design. The living area featured a large, sectional sofa in a warm, earthy tone, accented with pillows made from the same attire and aquite fabrics that had once been their only option. A stunning custom-made chandelier of hand-blown glass and recycled bronze, crafted by a Lagos-based artist, cast a warm, golden glow over the polished terrazzo floors. The air was always filled with the subtle scent of Zainab's signature oud and citrus diffuser, a scent that now defined the Zobachi brand. It was in this new home, a fortress of their own making, that they found their greatest, most personal joy. Zainab gave birth to a healthy, robust baby boy. His first cry echoed through the sunlit room, a sound more triumphant than any business success. They named him Chisholm, God is with me. His presence filled the spaces they had built with a new, profound meaning. His gurgling laughter from a playpen in the atelier was the ultimate validation of their choice. Obinna, who had once negotiated billion-dollar deals, now found himself captivated by the simple act of making his son laugh. Zainab would often pause during design sessions to watch them, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it felt like a new kind of power. They were no longer just Obinna and Zainab, the defiant couple. They were a family, and their foundation, tested by fire and rejection, was now unbreakable. The Zobachi flagship store opening in Victoria Island was less a corporate event and more a cultural moment. The facade, a sleek interplay of polished concrete and native Irako wood, glowed under the glare of camera lights. A red carpet, a deep, Zobachi-branded indigo, led to a towering glass door where a crowd of Lagos elite, fashion press, and eager customers mingled under the balmy night sky. Inside, the air was cool, scented with oud and possibility. Garments hung like works of art in the curated, brightly lit space, a testament to Zainab's vision of modesty as modern power. Obinna, standing near the entrance, at just the cuff of his signature white shirt, now a symbol of his own empire, not his father's. He watched Zainab move through the crowd. She was a vision in a custom-designed crimson abaya, its architectural lines accentuated by a single, striking gold belt. Her hijab, a masterpiece of draping, was the same brilliant white as his shirt. She was no longer the quiet student from the LSE library, she was a CEO, a designer, a force. She was holding their son, Chisholm, now a vibrant 3-year-old, who was clapping his chubby hands at the sparkling chandeliers. A team from Forbes Africa was there, capturing it all. The resulting cover story, published a month later, was not just about fashion. The photograph showed Obinna and Zainab in their penthouse living room, surrounded by the art and light they had curated. He was looking at her, not the camera, with a quiet, profound pride. She was looking directly into the lens, her expression one of serene, unassailable victory. The headline read, "The Defiant Ones, How Obinna Izudo and Zainab Yahaya Built a 5 Billion Nigerian Naira's Empire on Love and Grit." The magazine was delivered, as it always was, to the Izudo mansion in Ikoyi and the Yahaya compound in Kano. In the stark, silent lounge, Chief Emeka Izudo stared at the cover. He saw the confidence in his son's posture, the clear admiration in his eyes as he looked at his wife. He saw the opulent, tasteful background of a home Obinna had built without a single naira from the family fortune. The conglomerate he had spent his life building felt suddenly heavy, traditional, almost outdated next to the vibrant, talked-about brand that was Zobachi. The disowned heir had not faltered, he had flourished, creating a legacy more dynamic and beloved than the one had been born into. The weight of his error settled on the chief's shoulders, a cold, heavy mantle of regret. In Kano, Senator Yahaya sat in his grand reception room, the magazine open on his lap. His wife, Halima, peered over his shoulder. They both stared at the image of their daughter, radiant, powerful, successful, and undeniably, unshakably herself. Her faith was not a footnote, it was the core of her brand's identity, celebrated on a global stage. And in her arms, visible in the crook of Zainab's elbow in a smaller inset photo, was their grandson, Chisholm. His smile was a replica of Zainab's, his eyes held a familiar spark. The senator's stern facade finally crumbled. The fortress of his tradition, which he had believed was for her protection, now felt like a prison he had built around himself. He had feared the world would dilute her, but she had only become more concentrated, more potent. She had built a kingdom where she was both queen and high priestess, and she had done it without his blessing. The final, piercing blow came not from a business magazine, but from Instagram. Zainab, who had carefully curated her online presence to reflect her brand, occasionally offered glimpses of her personal life. She posted a short, spontaneous video. In it, Chisholm, giggling uncontrollably, had found one of her sample hijabs, a sheer, ivory chiffon, and had draped it over his own head, stumbling around their sunny living room. Apprentice in training, Zainab had captioned it, with a laughing emoji. The video went viral within their circles. It was the sight of that little boy, a perfect, joyful blend of both their families, so loved and so secure in the world his parents had built, that shattered the last of their grandparents' resolve. The pain of their absence became an ache too profound to bear. The pride they had clung to felt hollow and foolish in the face of this pure, unassailable joy. They had been punishing themselves, and in doing so, had missed the first 3 years of their grandson's life. The silence in their opulent homes was no longer peaceful, it was deafening. The legacy they had sought to protect was now staring back at them from a magazine cover and a smartphone screen, and it was time, finally, to surrender. The message was simple, a single image sent to both mothers on the same Tuesday morning. It was not a plea, nor an accusation. It was a quiet, powerful statement of fact. Zainab had captured a moment of pure, unvarnished joy. Chisholm, now 3.5, sitting on the terrazzo floor of their sunlit penthouse, completely engrossed in stacking colorful wooden blocks. He was building a lopsided tower, his little brow furrowed in concentration, a perfect replica of Obina's expression when analyzing a business report. The late morning light caught the subtle waves in his hair and the long, dark lashes that brushed his cheeks, lashes that were his mother's. He was the living, breathing synthesis of two worlds that had tried to reject each other. That image was the key that turned the lock. The response from Halima Yahaya came first, a single, tear-filled emoji. Crying face, then a follow-up message. "He has your eyes, Zainab." From Obina's mother, Neoma, the response was a phone call, her voice thick with an emotion she could no longer contain. "Obina, he looks so much like you did at that age. Bring him home, please." The orchestration of the meeting felt like preparing for a delicate diplomatic summit. The venue was crucial, neutral, yet symbolic. It had to be Obina and Zainab's territory, a testament to the world they had built. Their penthouse was the only choice. On the appointed evening, the air in the living room was thick with a decade of unsaid words. The setting sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long, golden beams across the polished floor, illuminating the beautiful fusion of art and culture that defined their home. The abstract Islamic calligraphy art hung beside a vibrant contemporary piece from a Lagos artist. The plush, modern sofas were accented with pillows made from northern Nigerian akwit and southeastern akwit. The two sets of parents arrived within minutes of each other. The silence as they stood in the same room was heavier than any of the luxurious fabrics in the showroom downstairs. Chief Izudo, in a simple but expensive Isiagu tunic, looked older, the stern lines of his face softened by a palpable regret. Senator Yahaya, in a flowing Babban Riga, held himself with his usual dignity, but his eyes kept darting around the room, taking in the clear evidence of his daughter's success and happiness. It was Chisholm who broke the tension. Hearing the unfamiliar voices, he toddled into the living room, clutching a toy car. He stopped, looking at the four new faces with wide, curious eyes. Then, with the unerring instinct of a child, he walked straight to his grandfather's, holding up his car. That small, trusting act was the final crack in the dam. Chief Izudo was the first to bend, both literally and figuratively. He crouched down, his large frame suddenly looking vulnerable. "Hello, little man," he said, his voice a rough whisper. He looked up at his son, his eyes shimmering. "We thought we were protecting our legacy. We were only stunting it." He gestured around the magnificent room, at Zainab, at his grandson. "You built something that breathes. Something that inspires. Forgive me." Senator Yahaya, watching the interaction, let out a long, slow breath. He accepted the toy car Chisholm offered him, his large hand enveloping the small plastic object. He turned to Zainab. "We feared the world would dilute you, Turawata. But you have only shone brighter. You built a home that honors both of you." His gaze shifted to Obina, a look of hard-won respect in his eyes. "You have protected her. You have honored her. We were wrong." Tears flowed then freely, Neoma and Halima embracing, the years of separation melting away in their shared joy as grandmothers. The men, stiff and formal at first, eventually shook hands, a grip that solidified a new, unexpected alliance. That evening, the extended family shared a meal around the large, modern dining table, a feast prepared by a chef but filled with dishes from both the north and the south. The conversation was initially stilted, then eased into stories about Chisholm, before tentatively touching on business, on politics, on a future that now included all of them. Under the soft, glittering glow of the bespoke chandelier, Obinna held Zainab's hand. Their journey had begun in the quiet starlight of a London park, navigated through the stormy darkness of rejection, and now found its peaceful, radiant harbor in the bright, beautiful light of a home they had built with their own hands and hearts. The fortresses of their past had not crumbled. Instead, their drawbridges had been lowered, connecting to a new, larger kingdom. A kingdom called family.